Blog Talk Radio. Hello, everyone. Welcome to N5D Radio's Cosmic Awakening Show, where we are serving this galaxy and beyond. My name is Michelle Walling, and I'll be your host tonight. I'm with N5D.com, and our goal is to reach as many people as possible with a database of articles, videos, and radio shows that will help aid you in your spiritual awakening. And tonight we're going to jump right into the show because we have a full hour with my first guest tonight. And then I will be bringing Greg Prescott on in the second hour of the show to talk about the topic of our show tonight. We are going to be Greg and I will be taking calls, and the phone number is area code 646-716-8890, 646-716-8890. In case you hear something tonight that you'd like to ask a question about, or if you'd like to just talk about your experience with our topic, which is the challenges of awakened parenting. Now, our very special guest is the lovely Laura Eisenhower. Laura is an intuitive astrologist, a global alchemist, a cosmic mythologist, and is the great-granddaughter of Dwight David Eisenhower. She's on a profound mission to reveal our true origins, connected with the Magdalene and Gaia Sophia energies of love and wisdom, and she works to liberate us from the military-industrial complex, the archonic systems, and all the false power structures here on the planet. For more than 15 years, she's been providing clairvoyant readings and transformative healings for individuals with the assistance of many divination tools and astrology. Focusing on chakra systems, Laura has advised on topics such as soul path, abduction, mind control, core issues, relationships, past lives, and physical ailments. She's been strategizing to solve the roots of major world problems, including epidemics, war, environmental degradation, and injustices that have been a result of the misuses of power of the shadow government. And she also covers hidden agendas connected to ET races and the exile of the divine feminine energies. Going through an intense world soul journey of the labyrinth, Laura has discovered an ability to open a natural stargate by co-creating with the Venus transits and weaving through the multi-dimensions of the higher and lower worlds. Clearing portals and moving past gatekeepers, Laura works to free us from the 3D holographic time loop and guide us back to the pleroma, which is the totality of divine powers. With great passion and courage, she is helping to return sacred union, divine wisdom, and the many faces of the goddess that have been buried and forgotten for thousands of years. And with that introduction, I would like to welcome Miss Laura Eisenhower to the show.
Hi, Michelle.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I've just been fascinated with your work. I had the pleasure of seeing you at the N5D conference back in 2013, I believe it was, and with Dr. Dream. And you did y'all did the galactivation on the beach, and that was just a wonderful time. And I could not wait to get you on the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. And yeah, that was an amazing event. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, tonight I wanted to talk about parenting for awakened individuals, because once you actually break the code of what's happening around you and you wake up for a purpose, being almost like a forerunner. At this time, we're still forerunners, those of us who are realizing what's happening and breaking out of the hypnotic trance. it's really difficult to be walking between two different worlds without bringing too much uncomfortable things into your family life, because the children, we still have to respect the fact that some of them are awakened and some of them aren't, and some of them don't want to. There's so much fear right now that they don't want to know what's happening as a comfort, because most of them are very sensitive. And so what I really wanted to talk about first is, and I know you can understand this, let's talk a little bit about how the fact that our children really aren't ours. I mean, we agree to bring a soul into our womb and birth them, and for the male, we agree to donate the sperm necessary to fertilize the egg. But really, they are souls having a physical experience here on the planet. So if you could go into that a little bit, I would appreciate that subject.
Sure. We're all sovereign beings. Nobody owns anybody. And when we come in, we're coming in, from all over the place. There's no real way to create any sort of consistency in our philosophy about this when we're dealing with multiple realities, different star systems, past and future. And, and here we are in the here and now. Sometimes there's karmic agreements, sometimes there's healing agreements, sometimes there's something that needs to be done in the ancestral lines. Sometimes there's walk-ins, sometimes there's just the whole point is there's all these different scenarios. And so when we give birth to a child and we, see them develop, part of the exchange is that you're here to guide them. You're here to encourage their voice and their truth in the world and their uniqueness. And I think very often we feel if we're a parent, we should be controlling and authoritarian, and we're sort of here to shape our children. And I think lots of people have had revelations along the way that programming is not what it's about. And it's not what it's about in this world when we see governments and false authority structures impose that on us. And so we really have to live the life that we deserve and take the initiative in the way we raise our kids.
Absolutely. And our children, speaking of you and me, we both have boys. Your two are 16 and mine's 18, and they're pretty lucky to have an awakened parent who has worked through the programming of anger and worthlessness and all these things that maybe our parents might have instilled in us, or maybe the television has instilled in the programming in their minds. So they're lucky to have somebody, who's grounded and comes from a place of love, because, I look around, I went to the grocery store today, and I'm telling you, there are still the people out there that they just can't, I just don't think that they can help it, because it's a program running in their mind. But man, they yell at their kids and tell them no, and the kids are always begging for the junk food, and they're reaching their hands out, and they're slapping their hand, and and they have so much sugar in them, probably, they're acting up or they're crying, and there's just so much unhappiness going on that, I think we've got pretty lucky kids. But tell me, if you would, about what level of awakening would you say, or how comfortable are your children with what you're doing as a, you're a public speaker, you're an intuitive, and, you're not like the other moms.
Right. I think when they were 12 years old, they went through a major shift about me. Before they didn't really quite understand what I was doing. And they were very much influenced by their friends and what their friends thought was cool, what their friends' parents fed, them, very often fast food and stuff that I'm not in agreement to. And they would defend this stuff and, thought that I was just a little bit over the top and a little bit weird. And then something really clicked in them, and now I have kids that complain if the food I got isn't clean enough or isn't organic enough. I know that it's like I'm given a hard time every day about what's in the fridge and what's in the cupboards. And, I ran a shipping delivery company, one of the first organic food stores that ever existed in this country. So I'm like, excuse me, your mother's very pioneering in the whole organic movement. So stop giving me a hard time, but literally they have lists of like the perfect balanced meals that, and they're putting me in my place, and I'm learning a lot from them. I'm like, whoa, okay. But I mean, I'm very, conscious about what I give them. And, I figure, it's pretty decent and balanced, but, they're taking it that much further and really paying attention to their blood type. And so I'm pretty impressed that they've, taken it this far. I was always encouraging it when they were young, and the food that they ate for me was, all that, but there was a lot of rejection and refusals. Now, it's a lot different. So I think what they've observed and understood is their own health, and just when they see what I do and they see the level of information I put out there, they know that a lot of the dark hidden agendas are linked to GMOs and the stuff that is put in our food and the stuff that we could just get at the grocery store. And so they've really managed to put two and two together and, have like a tremendous breakthrough in their teenage years, and make sense out of, what it is I'm doing. And of course it like covers all bases. And sometimes, I'm going to focus more in on a certain specific, but they know that the best that they can do right now is just take good care of their bodies. Some of the other stuff, I mean, they are very skeptical, but they at the same time have an open mind. So I think it's healthy discernment mixed with, really just tapping into, what their own wisdom body is telling them and what their intuition is telling them. So I think, for 16-year-olds, you can't, I mean, I'm glad. I'm proud of them in so many ways that, they're not just reading everything on the internet and gobbling it up. They're willing to accept the conspiracy stuff and the things about consciousness and the things about food and the things that are being done. I mean, they've passed out flyers to their classrooms about weather modification, geoengineering, and chemtrails. I took them out to Jane Wigington's house. They went to a SETI ranch with me for one of my talks, and what really got them over the hump was when they met my friends. As long as they think my friends are cool, then all of a sudden mom's going to be much cooler. But when mom's all on her own, it's more about let's give her a hard time. And things really changed when they were really inspired by the people I've been working with. And then they sat in on some of my talks, and things shifted. But their consciousness is really, on the physical, being in the now, exercising their own uniqueness and, learning about what's going on in the world. But I feel from a very healthy perspective, which I do encourage, and I just guide their process as best I can.
That's just beautiful. I, on the other hand, have had a little bit of a struggle, and there seems to be a hatred wall that's a program that is immediately triggered when I begin to talk about these things. And for the past 3 or 4 years, my son had allergies, and they were pretty seasonal, but they were pretty bad. I mean, I had to give him over-the-counter Zyrtec or Aleve to take care of that, and that's really the only thing that he's ever had as far as health issues. And I just knew that it was from the food he was eating. And when I was pregnant, of course, I didn't eat the best. I ate a lot of fast food. I worked, and I would bring home pizza or fast food for dinner. I mean, I was really deep into my program at the time. And so, and like you said, the peer pressure about the children at school and everything, we'll talk about school here in just a little while, about homeschooling or public school. But mine does go to public school, and I'm perfectly happy with that, because what I found out is that there's a group of his soul family, a very tight-knit group, that they just are brothers and sisters. And as far as food goes, though, I had been talking about GMOs, and there was just this huge disbelief that our government or there any other powers for that matter would do anything like that to us. And I would get the eye rolling and the glazed eye look, and then anger would come. And then finally I was forbidden to talk about it. But thankfully what happened is, and I think a lot of things shifted about 6 months ago, but thankfully what happened is his body simply could not tolerate some of these foods anymore, especially Taco Bell was a huge one. And it made him almost deathly ill. And like the third time, the first time he still did it, second time he still did it. But I think what shifted is that he began to really be concerned about his body and love his body and want more things that made him feel good. And he would eat bad food and it would make him sleepy and tired. And so listening to his body, he would begin to want to eat healthy and ask me, okay, well, maybe I'll try some of that grilled chicken, but I'm not going to have, he hasn't quite gotten to through the vegetable phase yet. He doesn't like vegetables. So he's really into some protein supplements, so I try to, buy the best organic things I can buy, and he works out a lot. So that's what I'm dealing with on this end, and all of it's good. I mean, it's all good because we have to respect the fact that we don't want to put, if our children are in fear, we don't want to instill something or push too much because it's just going to drive a wedge between you. So, what I'd like to revert to, for those out there who maybe are either pregnant right now or just are about to have a baby. And congratulations to all those mothers, because it's just the most wonderful thing to have that connection, and to the fathers as well. But, let's talk a little bit about if you have a male baby. Let's talk about circumcision. Can you let our listeners know the horrible? It's a hard topic to talk about, but it is on mothers' minds about circumcision, whether they should circumcise or not.
Right,
their baby boys.
Yes, I didn't with mine. That's just how it unfolded. And oh my gosh, no pun. I don't know if that's a pun. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so I know there's a lot written on the subject, and I didn't really read that much. It was just in the moment when it was presented to me, it just made zero sense. And that's all that I was drawing upon was mother's instincts. Is this really necessary? I don't quite get it. And I think in the world that we live in, with the imbalance of the masculine and feminine, particularly leaning on the side of the masculine energy being very patriarchal and the feminine energy being, kind of carrying a victim energy, which we really need to address and get over. It's like, our physical bodies and all the organs and everything, relates to our consciousness. Obviously, there's a link. And even though consciousness can override pretty much anything that happens with us physically and, heal things and work things out and process things through and create alchemy and all sorts of stuff, it just didn't seem like a really good introduction to the world to, have to have that experience. So
exactly,
women who are pregnant, who need empowerment on this, follow your heart. Are these people showing up at your home that you have to impress? We care so much about what people think, but these aren't the people that we keep in our lives forever. And even if we did, would we want people in our lives that we have to not be ourselves around? And is it worth putting something on the line for the sake of comfort levels that are far outdated and actually lead to a lot of discomfort? There's no comfort level in that for the child, so sticking with some sort of tradition, even though on a different level it might have a comfort zone, we got to break all of it. I'm rebellious, period, and that's just how I am. So I don't care what people think. But there is a part of me that lives a path of integrity and worries about being misunderstood and how I come across, and I spend a lot of time and energy processing just all that kind of stuff. But anyway, if you're struggling with these sort of topics, I make myself available. I do sessions. But I think, this is an example of what we're seeing in the larger picture. Empowerment, doing what you know is best and what you feel is right, trusting your gut instinct, listening to yourself. And I encourage people to jump on the treadmill and exercise your intuition. If it's atrophied, it's going to need to run a mile or so. And the way you're going to, exercise it and strengthen it is to use it and to put it into practice. And it's really just about stopping everything and backing away from projections, opinions, and everything else, and just what is your heart telling you? And I think with something like circumcision, I'm not here to tell somebody what to do, but I can very easily say that I followed the path of trusting myself and following my heart and tapping into what my kids wanted as far as their physical body. And so that's the best we can do, and I encourage people to do, that and educate yourself, of course.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. And, it was 18 years ago when I was in the hospital and I had all I really wanted is that baby out of me. At that point, right when you're at the end, I'm like, get this baby out of me, and then, once that part was done, and then I was just so tired, and then they're talking about, well, we've got to take your baby, you got to bring your baby back, and we're going to take your baby, and, with your approval, we're going to circumcise your baby if you would like. And my husband at the time was not, and I had never thought about it before. And like I said, I was, asleep at the point. But yes, it's a peer pressure thing. And really what they do is they strap your baby down and they cut the foreskin, and it's the first traumatic event of your baby is when the doctor slaps him on the ass, if you do have a doctor delivery. And if it's not, if your baby's not already breathing or crying, they make the baby cry. That's the first traumatic thing. Welcome to the world. But, it's a very traumatic event, and it's a ritual type thing that was invented by I believe by the Catholic Church or the Vatican mixture, the Roman Catholic Church. That's what that would be. So that's what I've read about it. But I did want to bring it up because it's these are the types of topics that you need to do your research on and figure out if I see no reason for it whatsoever. What they'll try to push is cleanliness. So, but what you got to do is if you've already made that decision and you've done it, you've just got to help heal that trauma with your child with love and grounding, and know that it's all going to work out, and that Gaia is here to help us heal those types of energies. So the next topic that I have is school. And, a lot of public schools will not allow your child to go to school without these vaccines. And we've come to find out all of the dastardly things that they're putting in vaccines. And my child just loves public school, and that's where he met a really good group of friends that he's so close with. And so tell me a little bit about how you feel about vaccines. And of course my son did have vaccines, and he's a healthy kid. I mean, I think our children these days, their bodies are going to be able to process and fight some of these things. So there's still there's no guilt on this end. At the time I didn't know, but if you can help vaccines, what would you say about vaccines?
And that's really important to not carry any guilt. I mean, it doesn't matter when our awakening is, and there's different catalysts along the way. I mean, obviously I was born into the Eisenhower family, so, it was pretty likely that I was going to hit my head against the wall and ask a bunch of questions and, look outside of the box a little bit on that one. I mean, my mom, I don't even want to say this on the air, but she got my kids vaccinated without my permission when they went to visit her when I was weaning them, because I breastfed them for quite some time. And, of course, that really upset me because, I wanted to make the decision. I was still reading a lot back then. I mean, it was 1998, 1999, and the level of information was a lot different back then compared to where it is now. And, I would run into people, that would tell stories about, vaccination damage, and I would also meet people that, ended up with like polio, for not getting the shot. And I'm like,
exactly. So, I know.
And it was just like a tug of war, and I kept manifesting more reasons to be indecisive. And like I said, if I was birthing now, I would not do it at all. Back then, I was on the fence a little bit, pretty much more leaning towards, I don't think so. But then my mom took it to the next level because she absolutely was sold. And, I just like you, it's like, I just have to let go. And energy is powerful. It can heal all sorts of things. And but as long as we do have the choice, and we have the information readily available that we might not have had back, when you and I had birthed our children, to really kind of kick us into, that absolute certainty, be empowered. So what would anybody think? People are going to have so much more respect for you for following your truth and being confident in yourself. And the self-doubt, I mean, it's hard to escape no matter what decision we make when we're dealing with the great unknown. But this is where you really have to trust spirit, to soften those areas that make us feel like we're alone in anything, or that it's all up to us making the best decision. And if we do it wrong, we're doomed. It's like Spirit's powerful. And if we just stay connected and we're coming from our heart, all sorts of miracles happen because there's a direct channel, connecting with ourselves and everything around us. And, if you have integrity and you're just doing the best you can, I think we are able to overcome everything versus, going with the program and still being programmed and losing oneself and disconnecting from soul. It's a very challenging life experience. So just know that the power of your heart, no matter what decision you make, can override anything. But now we're in an era where there's tons of information out there. Like I said, read up on it, put the intuition on the treadmill, exercise it as much as possible, and, be empowered. And that's where it's at. And then you get to be the example, so consider yourself, a pioneer or a leader, but feel good about what you're doing. And if for any reason you just at a gut level think vaccines are good, I'm not here to step in your way. We all run into what we run into that gives us what we need to make a decision. And, but, I do have my opinions, and I'm leaning towards, no vaccination. I don't see the necessity so much in this world. There's all sorts of things that they put in them, implants, things connected to artificial intelligence. Poisons, cancers, diseases. So we're not talking like vaccines for the reasons we would be getting them, that we think we're getting them for. It's a danger to that soul's development, but with consciousness and with the power of spirit and being aligned with healing energy, or working with people that are powerful healers, we can overcome and move through anything. So there's no time to be hard on the self. Just keep moving forward. And if you have decisions in front of you, I'm not going to repeat myself, but exactly what I just said, I encourage you to do. And I just, this is why I love doing sessions, because get to really work with the individual and help them understand how they operate, so that they can feel more grounded and centered in who they truly are.
Exactly. And, vaccines, I believe that vaccines were kind of like a problem solution, reaction solution type thing, where they, if there were measles going around and you didn't take the vaccine, of course, you would get the measles. But then what they didn't tell everybody is what else was in the vaccines, and how they started putting the mercury in there. And our bodies, don't need the mercury. And then they started getting more progressive with the nanobots, the little particles of implants and things like that, to where eventually, they would be working with the chemtrails and the HARP and not only that, but just the EMF frequencies and everything that's around us. And so we put a lot of information on N5D about vaccines. And it's still amazing to me. Everybody can have their own opinion, just like you said, but it's still amazing to me, those who are instantly get the programming reaction to where, I can't believe you're putting this information out, even though we don't say, we just put information out and let everybody make their own minds up. But, we're not telling anybody not to vaccinate. But then there's the people who say, I can't believe you're telling people not to vaccinate your children. Your children could die, or they could, get a disease or whatever, So there's just as much, there's almost as much opposition out there as there is information against vaccines. So if, I totally agree. If I had to do it over again, I probably would not vaccinate unless public school required it and I needed to put my child in school, because, we are still living in this third dimensional environment right now, to where we either have to go to work and provide as a single parent that we are, or, even if most of the time both parents have to work these days, it's all part of the program that was set up to enslave and control us and keep us away from our children for a large part of the day. So if we don't put our children in school, we get in trouble. So if we don't homeschool and you have to put them in public school, you might have to, either, do the vaccines or somehow, get around it. But there's always those parents that are in fear on the other end going, I don't want my child going to school with your child unless your child's vaccinated because your child could give my child something. I mean, there's just so much programming around it. It's a very hot topic, and we're not going to spend, any more time on it, but that's really what I wanted to say about vaccines and why I brought it up. And you can we just posted an article on N5D. It's still on the home page. You can find it, and Body, Mind, Soul, Spirit is another website of ours that has a lot of information. And there's a search engine bar in the top right hand corner of both pages on vaccines. So, if in a better world, if we were able to have community, and when you have a child, it gets raised in a family type environment, even if your whole family doesn't live with you, like your brother or sister, or, to give the child an aunt or uncle, they may live next door, or they may live down the street or whatever. And, a lot of the children these days are growing up with really small families and maybe even, one person in the household. And that, takes all of your attention when you are with your child if they're not in school. And, it gets a little overwhelming and frustrating when you're faced with having to be the total household breadwinner or the housewife and house mom and do everything at once and still, be able to spend quality time with your children, especially when they are distracted with other things like the television and their friends and going places and things like that. So, tell me a little bit how you feel about the decisions you've made about private school, public school, or homeschooling, and what has really worked for you.
Well, I only could do what I had. I mean, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't put them in Waldorf schools. I didn't have the money. I mean, people think, oh, you're an Eisenhower. You're not sitting on a big trust fund. No, I'm not. Nobody is. People are like, were you kicked out of the family and ostracized? And I'm like, no. And I can understand the projections, but, because that would be an easy thing for maybe some other presidential family. But it's been just, I've had to do everything that I could possibly do pretty much on my own with some support from family, and bless them for the help that they did and have been able to give me. It has been amazing, and it's taught me how to, stand on my own too, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Like if there's an emergency, like I can get help with rent, and, if I need to go somewhere, my mom will watch the kids type thing. It's a very down-home, down-to-earth family. Anyway, so I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I moved a lot. I birthed the kids in Olympia, Washington. One of our first moves was New Mexico, a little town called Cerrillos. And every time I would move somewhere, it was like community was forming. Other women, who had birthed their babies, and there was a lot of, really good things happening. And the possibility of things like homeschool, were starting to formulate. So private schools, never really an option. Homeschooling, I saw that window open a few times. But I was with a very unstable person. The father of my kids, I mean, it's a very, very tragic and sad story, was not okay. And it's as much as he loved his children, the erraticness and instability made it very difficult for us to put down any roots. And we had a school bus for a little while, and we had a van we lived out of, and we were moving all over the place and all over the country, with these adorable little twins. And it was like, okay, now is the school thing. Like, what are we going to do? Live on the road and I'm just going to teach them everything while you have your episodes and aren't really that stable? I'm like, I can't do this anymore, And I just got us some stability. I put them in public school, and I'm fine with how it's all ended up playing out. I've needed to work and do my mission stuff, and I've needed to do readings. I've done every job from, landscaping to cleaning hotel. I mean, you name it. I've done so many different jobs, and now I'm self-employed doing readings. But, to raise these kids, I mean, I was on food stamps even for a good portion of their growing up years. And so I didn't really, like I said, have those options, but I would have loved to homeschool. There was possibilities in the works, but then because of their dad, we would end up leaving. And then I just took the reins, and I ended up leaving him, and I just single parented, and I pulled together all the resources I could, including assistance from family, but also food stamps for a period of time, landscaped, woke up at like 6 in the morning, worked till 6 at night, covered in dirt when I came home. Sometimes I would pass out on the couch, and my kids would be like, Mom, you got to get up. And like, are you going to take a shower? I'm like, what? Just so exhausted, working in the drought, doing all this stuff. But, it's such a good feeling, at the end of the day. And I love where things are at now, but public school, and that's where it's at. And that's where it's been at, not necessarily where it's at. So if you don't have a choice, make it happen, make it work. And if you do have a choice, homeschooling is amazing. And, if you can afford private schools, all the power to you. They did do independent study for a little while, and now they're back in regular school. And I wake up at 6:30, and I'm becoming a morning person, and I'm cherishing every day of their last year and a half home with me. So.
Well, I can totally relate to that. At the moment, I did say mine's 18, but, I have spent some time in Florida part-time and part-time back here. I'm in Texas right now. And, like I said, he loves public schools. I ignore the attendance policy that they have. I've become a very lenient parent. The schools get paid every day based on attendance from the state. And they try to hound you if your child doesn't go to school. Of course, you want to know if they're skipping school, but I've never had any problems like that because I think a lot of those problems are triggered by the parents who are the controlling parents and don't allow their child to be who they are and be free and things like that. But so every day that as it gets closer to graduation, and you'll probably see this too with your kids, is that he's like, you know what, we are not doing anything in school, and school is ridiculous. The things that they teach us, I'll never use some of this stuff, and as you and I know, a lot of that stuff is all bullshit anyway. I mean, I think mathematics is great, and I think we need to know how to express ourselves with the language that we have. But if the kids, Greg and I wrote an article one time on the things that maybe when we change the schooling system, what we could teach our children about our cosmic and galactic heritage and what are the etymology of language and, how to garden and all kinds of stuff, that our kids would much rather be in. But thank goodness that mine had an opportunity to play trumpet throughout high school, which, a lot of schools have cut funding on creative arts and things like that. But we were fortunate enough to have that. But I think a Montessori school for those who are facing any kind of private school choices, might be the best thing to check into if I was going to do private. But I think that the ones of us that are listening tonight, I really believe that we had more of a chance of planning out a life than we really think, and we did it so we could set ourselves up in this lifetime right now to make a difference in the world. And so things are, pretty much going our way, and I think things have really lightened up over the last 3 years, I think, in my life. Finally got through a bunch of hurdles. My son's father actually passed away a little over a year and a half ago from that new leaky gut syndrome that, he was a heavy beer drinker. I wasn't married to him at the time, but he suddenly died. And so, these are struggles that our children are having. And, if it's not the dead parent, it's, the single parent and everything. So, we've just got to do the best that we can right now and not, not be too, when you do find out about what's happening on the planet, having awareness is the most important thing. And that kind of takes care of everything else. You can still put one foot in the old world and have the other foot in the dream world, dreaming of a new earth and what we're going to do on this planet when we, as people are waking up in droves. So the next thing, the next subject, past school, I wanted to talk about is sex. Sex is pushed at earlier and earlier ages, beginning with television. I allowed my child to watch TV growing up. My child was glued to the television. He got all the programming 100%. He still has a television in his room. I don't have one in the living room or in my bedroom. But it's hard for me to explain to him about the television right now because he is so heavily programmed, and so I have to respect the automatic fear that might come out of, you're crazy. I don't, whatever you're saying doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just going to my ego's going to put up a wall to protect myself. But I see, Disney is one of the most evil programmers out there. And, there's so much subliminal programming in the cartoons, especially when we were kids, Laura. They still had it. All of the older cartoons had the subliminal programming, which means that the children don't actually see it consciously, but it hits them it hits their subconscious level. And if you would talk a little bit about the black magic that they use in Disney programming for, making children accept sex, want sex, and experiment with sex at younger and younger ages, and your awareness about that.
Yeah, we're in a world that, the Vatican, there's pedophilia in the church. There was a naked man climbing out of the window of Buckingham Palace. We're talking about, these are our power structures that people gravitate towards. Millions of people show up and, put these people in a very high place. And, okay, some of those stories maybe weren't out then, but they are out now, and we still see nothing but support, cover-ups, it's called a hoax, this and that. It takes years and years and years for people to accept 9/11 was an inside job. But in 30 seconds, we'll call it a hoax that somebody's climbing out of the window naked, from the Buckingham Palace. And so, we can just imagine that if this is what we're dealing with, and that's what's kind of trying to run the world, and we've got pop stars that are scantily clad and, projecting themselves in music to young people in a way that encourage them to sort of follow the trend. And then, that's all kind of obvious in your face. And then all the subliminals, it's like we're all being very, very worked from the minute we get here. Sometimes it's things like a person climbing out of the window of Buckingham Palace that might open a lot of eyes, and shift things a little bit. But the programming is everywhere. The distortions of the masculine and feminine, the manipulation of Kundalini energy, and how certain technologies actually siphon that energy. The thing is, if we're functioning in our lower chakras and we're just having casual sex with whoever we want, we run the risk of opening really dark portals and bringing in, entities and beings. And I don't think we understand the dangers. A lot of my work is about, educating people about sacred sexuality, sacred union, honoring the body, deprogramming a lot of this stuff. And, basically this is a huge target. Unity is a huge target. Sacred union is a huge target. And most especially our sexual energy and the way we use it. Now, I'm not here to be a moral judge and police about all of it. I've learned my lessons. I've made my mistakes. When I, see how my kids are, so far it's like good. They're not chasing girls in a negative way. They give them respect. Don't see them as objects. Probably because their mother's a bit of a bitch when I notice any of that sort of behavior around me. I will not stand for it at all. And I think they saw the fire-breathing dragon and they just know that it's not going to fly when it comes to this. And so, but it's a problem, and I recognize it, and who knows, knock on wood, that it might become a problem for them. TV is toxic. Everything outside of the self, I wouldn't, give the time of day unless it's a soul family feeling, unless you know the person, unless it's a partner that you feel really good about, unless it's a part of the family tribe, unless it's, somebody really telling their story, and where we can look at each other and say, what's your gift and ability? All right, let's listen to it. If it's streaming through the media, Hollywood, government, religion, or anything like that, hello, everybody. I'm going to pass out red flags that you can wave during election time and all these other times, instead of supporting these candidates or supporting something that we need to say goodbye to. It's all red flags. It's all dangerous. And, the best way we can guard our children from it is to understand, how the cell towers are, the smart meters, what the frequencies are that come through TVs and cell phones, and start to, get things that are going to neutralize those energies. And, get your kids, get them a reading, and Let them explore their consciousness. Make it fun. Make it fun instead of we're going to the shrink. Maybe we're going to get an astro reading and figure out what your unique talents are. We got to drop the labeling and you're hyperactive or you're this or that. It's sex becomes an addiction too in a form of escapism when a sense of identity and self-love is lacking. So that's also where parents are controlled. So it's a nightmare, but thank God for you and others, that are really just giving people a voice and saying it like it is. And that's our hope right now.
Well, I just don't want everybody to think that we are just the perfect little spiritual people out here. I mean, our children are their own person. I mean, my child lived with his father for about 5 years. I had him the years before that, maybe 3 years on my own. And before that, me and his father were married. And then, he came to live with me full time when his father passed away. And, he had a lot of programming already from the family environment that he lived in. It was not conducive any at all to any kind of anything other than this horrible television. I mean, he watches Adult Swim. He watches things that I just am shocked. I was shocked when I would hear these things 10 years ago, but it's gotten totally open. Anything you could talk about, anything on these adult cartoons are amazing. There's not in a good way. I mean, anything and everything they talk about, and they're really pushing the alien agenda. They're really pushing the alien agenda too. For we know why they want to. They know that they can't keep it really a secret anymore, so they want the aliens to be our saviors and to come down and save the planet. Which we know that's all going to be, could be a future timeline of a false flag event. But the television, I just wanted to tell people that we just got to do the best we can here. I do say something about it, and how ridiculous I think it is, but I really try not to harp too much on it because I have to walk on eggshells. Let me just put it that way, in a way, because I don't want to cause any friction. We're talking about someone who, I'm all that he has left, except for his friends. So, it would crush him if I didn't approve. But on the other hand, when I don't approve, it crushes him, and he's very sensitive as well. And so, really, what you can do is just. I think the best thing that's worked for me is saying that, you're 18 now, even a 16-year-old, I support your individual decisions. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. And as far as sex goes, I did have the best kind of talks that I could. Basically, when I was away, kids are going to find a place to have sex wherever. I mean, I was that age too. There's cars. I mean, there's all kinds of places. So I knew that, I wasn't going to, say that I didn't know what was going on when I'm not here. I just said, look, if you don't use a condom or any kind of protection and you get somebody pregnant, we're going to have some real problems right now. Real problems. And that's about as stern as I get, but very serious, And I said, you can't always rely on the girl taking the birth control. And, I instantly, of course, I got the mom, no, Mom, we're not going to have this conversation. And he would, he would not like it if he knew I was talking about it now. But I'm just sharing it I just share everything in my experience that I can with the world right now because there's so much confusion out there, I think, about what is wrong and what is right. And, you has said it best, Laura. You just got to go with what you feel. And, back to the circumcision thing, I felt it wasn't right. I really did, but I didn't follow my intuition and gut feelings on it. If you don't really know why you're having that alarm go off or you're feeling uncomfortable about something. So, let's talk about, I just wanted to finish up with the music. Yeah, the music industry has just gone, with Miley Cyrus riding a large penis on stage. It's unbelievable. And I just saw the movie Chappie, rated R, and people brought their children, younger children, maybe 4 or 5, 6 years old, into the movie, and there were penis references all throughout the movie written on the walls. One guy had a penis tattooed, an erect penis tattooed on his forearm. I mean, it's just out there everywhere, and you've got to be responsible to do the best you can if you have small children that aren't going to be arguing with you like our teenagers are, to really shield them from that as much as possible, and spend time in nature with your kids if you know, every chance you can, because Mother Earth, Gaia, is going to ground with them and help to protect them right now, because it's our children right now that are going to make the biggest difference with their awakening. And some of them are already coming onto the planet with these memories of their past lives. So, you know, there's a lot of special children being born right now. And can we talk a little bit about what what people can do for the children that are open and receptive, or are perhaps younger, where they can be more programmed the right way, put it that way, as to what kind of activities and what kind of things should people be working on with their children to help them grow the best. Let's just imagine that you had, you know, toddlers right now. What would you do? And then a little bit older, what kind of activities and things would you do that would get them more into metaphysical and opening up to, you know, speaking with animals? And let's say they have any psychic abilities. How can you help them grow?
Well, I think exposure is really important, and also when they're, you know, younger, like toddlers, when they first start talking, to pay attention to just everything that they say, you know, their first sentences, what is it that they're saying, you know, ask questions, and engage, you know, with your child. There's all sorts of amazing things, you know, that, you know, come from them. Very often parents just sort of, you know, oh, they're just being kids, or, oh, what a cute little toddler, you know, saying silly things. But, you know, the toddler could be talking about, you know, the last star system it was hanging out on. My kids said extraordinary things when they first started talking, and I paid attention, and they knew things about me and my mission. Now it's like I bring it up to them, and they're like, what? It'll come back, I'm sure. But, you know, just really giving them your ear and encouraging creative projects, and, you know, like when people are sitting at the dinner table, you know, that whole old paradigm thing, children should be seen and not heard, you know, where the child is interrupted, ignored, and it's all about the parents. All that programming, it's just like, it has to go. It's like, it's not about turning your kids into narcissists. It's about, you know, just having direct attention on them and just being open to who they are and creating a comfortable space for expression to flourish, you know? So if like a few words are coming out and you can't really make sense out of them, you know, wait till the noises are over before you talk over the child, you know, and make that voice really, really important. You know, creativity, musical instruments, being in nature. I mean, I think this is what, you know, helped my kids not be so programmed. I mean, they had to move through some stuff, and they still got stuff. I mean, who doesn't? But, you know, and exactly what you said about nature, it grounds you, it's healing, it connects one with a frequency and vibration that, you know, feeds, you know, the soul and the heart, and connects with, you know, just the truth of who you are and what you're made of. Getting out of the matrix as much as possible is important. So I would say getting as many breaks as possible in nature, you know, being very engaging in anything that your child has to say, paying attention to when they say, I would really love to learn how to do this. And not, you know, just sort of ignoring it to wait till they say it again. You know, just say, okay, well, let's get on it. Let's pursue this. And if they give up, don't call them a quitter. I mean, sometimes it's about feeling things out. You know, don't worry about what other people think if the process is a little erratic, you know. I mean, I think it's difficult because you don't want, you know, your child to give up. But I think once you realize that the power struggle is only going to lead to injury and insult and pain, you got to just stop and turn the other way and just respect the boundaries of your child and not push things too much. And you're just brilliantly saying so much, addressing that. And I love that, you know, because they got to find their way, and they don't have to have it all figured out at the age of 8 if they want to, you know, finish, you know, Taekwondo and get the highest level certificate. I mean, some parents are very hard on their kids, and those kids, you know, have all sorts of stress issues later in life. So balance is everything, you know, that ebb and flow, that balance, you know, listening to your child, encouraging things as well. You know, when they want to give up, encouraging them not to, but when it really starts to turn into something, you know, like a major power struggle, you know, I would give your kids a bit of the upper hand. And I love that, you don't criticize. And I mean, I know it's a challenge because we sometimes run our parents' energy. There's certain things that I'll be hard on them about just because it's such a bad programming and it's destroying the planet. But other things, it's like they got to find their way. And, we're going to find our way too as parents. When we fall on our face and have to get back up again, they're raising us and we're raising them. And it's a co-creative process. I always say my kids raised me. If it wasn't for them, who even knows? I don't know. I don't even know if I would have survived.
Well, for a lot of us who do the work that we do, they are the ones that keep us grounded, that's for sure. And we have them to thank for that. And one of the things that I always like to add is, there's the programming runs really deep on self-worth. That they could never be as good as all the people who have all the money on television or have the hot bodies. The hot body thing starts way young now. We're talking toddlers who look in the mirror and dance around and do gyrations and bumps, and it just starts really young. And with the foods that we have, it causes a lot of inflammation, a lot of weight gain, because our bodies are trying to deflect and protect our bodies from all these toxins that we have. And it's all part of an elaborate program to keep our children's self-confidence down. And so it's very important to let them know, how very special they are and how they are definitely, have a light inside of them that shines, and how special they are and how much you have unconditional love from them no matter what decisions they make, no matter what errors they have. And if you start that programming early, you're not going to see, in my opinion, just from what's happened in my life, you're not going to see a lot of that rebellious, combative things, because you're allowing the child to grow and be who they are and to express themselves. It's very important to let them express themselves. I had a show with Fernando Vosa, and he has a program that allows children with special abilities to use art to express themselves and to grow their psychic abilities and their interdimensional abilities through art. And so I think that's a really, really good tool. Music is another, really good music is a really good other tool. Although, if children need a way to escape, I'd rather it be through music than drugs. So, it's just that the music, a lot of the pop music has those subliminal things that cause negative thought forms. We are energy generators, and our children, are subjected to negativity all the time, negative thought forms, and they can create them too. And once a thought form is created, it's energy. It's an alive thing, and it can't be destroyed. It just has to be transmuted. So we're always fighting that, working on with unconditional love, changing the thought forms. And that's just a way that you can be, conscientious of what's happening with your child. And that starts with yourself. One of the best things you can do for your children, in my opinion, is work on yourself every single day. Every day you wake up, work on yourself. Yeah. And so, and the television also programs your children for them to think that that their parents don't know anything. It's a real trick. It's a real big trick. Don't listen to your parents. They don't know anything. And in a way, it's true. But on the other hand, it's like everything's duality on this planet. That's total bullshit. Especially the ones of us who are awakened and really know what's going on the planet. So. It's a struggle, but, it's also a blessing in disguise because, it opens up our heart chakras and it allows us to stay grounded and connected with the planet, and that's what's going to make a difference. And so one of the last topics I want to talk about, and then I'll give you a chance to follow up with anything that you have as closing, because I know that you only have an hour with us today, is let's talk about finances. Now, one of the first things you want to do when you wake up is to get the hell out of the matrix, is to stop giving your energy to any kind of, job that's making you unhappy or is contributing to the banking system, to the oil and gas industry, to pharmaceutical. That's the first thing that comes to your mind, is to pull your energy out when you start realizing that you're a contributor and you're saying yes, and you're just by working. But I just want to address the fact that if you're a single parent, you have no choice but to get whatever job you're best qualified for right now that's going to make the most money. And I think Spirit will help work through you. Your larger part of yourself will help work through you when it's time to move on away from a toxic environment. You know it. You feel it inside. But, Laura, you do these readings, and, it's just one great, wonderful example of the creativity that we can use to make a living. I mean, I'm a holistic life coach. And in order to talk about being a holistic life coach, I do a free radio show and I write free articles. So, I do work very hard, and the pay is not that good, but I know that later on, my mission is really a lot bigger than, worrying about what I'm getting paid right now, as long as I can make my bills. But Laura, this is just a really big topic for a lot of people right now who are really struggling, because part of the program, as you know, with the government is to take, we're basically slaves, and they take most of our money. So what kind of advice would you give those people who are in this want to be in this kind of business, or are in, the situation where they have a little bit of fear around changing jobs and trying to go into this, what they call maybe a light worker field to do for a living? What are some suggestions you have for them?
Well, first of all, if you have what I guess we would consider a matrix job, just know you don't have to, feel like you're in it or of it. I mean, what we do with our hands and our bodies throughout the day is different than what we might do with our consciousness. I mean, when I was, cleaning toilets in hotel rooms and washing dishes and doing all sorts of stuff, I was in another world. I was exploring other things, and it was, okay, this is how I'm making money. When it comes to knowing that this isn't the end all be all, and this isn't your life path or your, career, you got to start thinking about it. Like, what are you here for? I mean, my mission got activated when I was a little kid, so not everybody has that. But as far as like taking it to a different level, obviously it changed over the years what I could and couldn't do. So when I was a parent, when I was also not a parent, I had all sorts of jobs. My background was in wilderness expedition leadership, and so that's not really a job that you can do and raise children. And so when I did have my kids, it was like everything that I'd been trained for kind of went out the window, except for their survival skills and, just being resourceful and knowing how to work with groups and bring about harmony and, all the different things, has helped me with everything I do from this point forward and as a mother, but not a job that I could easily get. So, what is, the hobbies and what is one's passion, and what, does one do in their off time? Can you develop something with that? Because this is actually what I did. I would go to my jobs, whether it was landscaping or some of the other ones that I did, and I would have my cards with me. And I would sit in the truck with people, and I would give them readings. And, when I saw the way that people reacted and, just how much they encouraged me to do this, more, I started to wean myself off of needing, the full-on 9-to-5 job, or actually it was like 7 to 7. It was way more than 9 to 5. I started to build this thing on the side. I started to build a website connected to my mission and the workshops I wanted to do. I created it like it was going to happen no matter what. This is what I'm doing in workshops. These are the readings that I, can do. And here's some articles. This is my mission. And when the timing was right, all the synchronicities fell into place. And then, I got, clients and people started paying. And then once it got to a certain point, I, was able to finally let go of the day job. I did work part-time for a while as the readings started to pick up, and now I don't have a part-time job. I just do full-on readings. So I went from having a full-time job that had nothing to do with the work I do, except I was always doing the mission, because we're always in our purpose. I mean, it doesn't matter what our job is. I mean, it's great to have one that's a good match. But so anyway, so I was doing the job. I was doing readings on the side. I then had a part-time job. I let the readings take over, and now I do readings. So get the ball rolling, and I mean, depends on what's around you. If you don't have kids, it's easier to take risks. If you do have kids, in your off time, just be creative. let your uniqueness shine and what you're good at. And if you don't feel like you're good at anything, sign up for some workshops, get your cellular memory woken up, get some massages, get some time in nature. Those revelations will come, especially if you feel anxiety connected to it. We don't feel a soul longing or an anxiety unless there's something that we're trying to unearth. And we don't have a symptom in our body unless there's a message that's going to ultimately help us be more whole and balanced. It's not to, hurt us or kill us or take us down. That's the programming. Everything, is here to guide us and assist us in getting higher and better. The Matrix teaches us to fear it and to give our power away. So just remember, to not go down that road.
Yes, and something else you can do is, you can get a reading to talk about that, what kind of thing would make you the most satisfied, and maybe, even go beyond what, you're feeling and seeing with your five senses, and, rely on somebody that can get into that, other realm to, just to get an idea maybe from your guides or whatever as to what would be successful. And or you could have a life coaching session, and I could help out. There's a lot of Helene Lipson is another psychic astrologer that has a show on N5D, and she does readings as well. And there's a lot more people that we could suggest, but I think now what people are realizing is they're learning how to go within, and they're learning how to connect, and realizing that doors are opening when they do that. And really, when you do the work on yourself first, your wheels don't spin as much. You don't just sit around going, I don't know what I'm going to do, and you're not confused. It's almost like you get a clear path put right in front of you. So that's one thing I would suggest, is just keep doing that work on yourself, because there's just so much that you really probably don't even realize that is being cleared right now out of your energy field as you connect with the planet and spend time with yourself and love yourself. Those are just, it sounds simple, but it does take a little bit of concerted effort and work to take the time for yourself. And that's sometimes kind of hard if you've got a household full of kids. So, I really suggest getting some temporary babysitters 2-3 times a week if you have your kids 24/7, and just have a little time for mom or dad to go out and to spend time in nature, or to just, do something that you love. There's a lot of open eye meditation you can do when you're doing something you love. I love to travel. I love to drive. I love to be in new and exciting places. And so that's one of the things that always helps me regenerate and charge my batteries. So let's see. One of the other things, and when you do get into this field, a lot of people have such big hearts that they have a problem charging anybody. And then there's always that negative program running that says, well, you should be giving this information away for free if you're truly a light worker or whatever. We've got to live in this. We've got to live right now in survival mode, unfortunately, to raise our children. And if we want to be of service, we do have to charge. If somebody doesn't have the money, of course we work with people. And if they're really in a desperate situation and you can see that they're not grounding and they really can't get it and they don't know what that means, of course you're going to spend time to work with them. But for those who do have the capabilities to pay for a session or a reading, it always gets paid forward to somebody else who doesn't. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to decide whether you should charge or not, or how much you should charge. It's got to be reasonable, because, there's a lot of the healers and a lot of the light workers that need help themselves as well. So they can be the best that they can be, helping other people out. So in closing here, I didn't have any, let's see if I have any questions in the chat room before I let you go. I'm curious, Larry Locken. Larry Locken was my wonderful co-host when I first started this show. He says, I'm curious to see if she sees the kids of today, say the under 20 generation, as being born with a higher level of consciousness, i.e. Marciniak's take on the kids born with more helix strands infused.
Yeah, definitely. there's also, indigo and crystal races that were seeded quite a long time ago through the Ark of the Covenant, and those souls are reincarnating. There's souls coming in from different star systems that have never been here. There's souls that, are incarnating on Earth for the first time that came in to help from other universes. I mean, every scenario under the sun, and then we've got hybrids, it's, and all sorts of weird DNA combinations going on because of, the ETs and their involvement with our development. And, but, very advanced souls were born a while back. But yes, we are inside of an organism, and you almost can see it like, Gaia's having, a birthing of, a whole new generation of something connected to her revelation and her, blossoming of ascension. So the children being born are going to represent that vibration. Like during the Goth period when everything was dark, the goddess was very much trying to get herself out of the underworld. So funny that all these souls were born very much like they lived in the underworld, just like dark.
Yeah.
And you see sort of waves of things, generation to generation, the hippie generation and, different things. Some of it is socially engineered and some of it, just has to do with the general vibration of things. And when we stand back and look at it as a whole, this planet has been growing and evolving and shifting and changing, unfolding into her potential as we have too. And, when we move out of the time loop and we recognize that past and future events influence this whole thing, it allows us to have an open mind as to what sort of souls are being born. Some are wave carriers to help us get to the next level. Some link us with the ancient past, and some are from the future. But we have to see that, time is almost irrelevant. The past is just like a memory. The future is, a dream or a vision that we can manifest. And the now is obviously the place to create. But with all the vaccines and some of the infiltrations, some souls coming in are having even a harder time than they did thousands of years ago. So, but I would say there's a major wave of very highly advanced kids for sure.
Excellent. Well, I just wanted to let our listeners know that they can find you at cosmicgaia2012.com. Is that the main website for booking any kind of readings?
Yeah, it's also called cosmicgaiasophia.com. You can use both servers,
okay.
But the 2012 one I don't really use just because the dates passed, and it was just to draw a lot of attention to that during that time.
cosmicgaiasophia.com. I'm going to type that in the chat room here, cosmicgaiasophia.com. I mean, it would be an honor to get a reading from you. I think I would like to do that as well, because you just have so much. You have so much. You have so much wisdom of being someone who has been on this path for such a long time, and it doesn't mean that those people out there that just woke up don't have a lot of wisdom. It's just that, wow. I mean, I've seen growth. You just see growth over the years, and you see. You can look back and you can say, wow, where I was 10 years ago is nowhere like where I'm at now. Everything's in acceleration so much. So, but, I think things are really, ramping up. Every time there's an extreme measure against us on this planet, there's also an extreme positive thing to counteract it. And so I really appreciate you joining us this evening about parenting. And is there anything else that you'd like to say in closing for the show?
I just want to thank you so much for having me. This is, a great topic. I don't get to talk about this stuff very often. And yes, like you said, the websites have been shared. I love working with people. It's one of my passions. I think we've really covered it. Just be empowered and unify and know that your unique gifts are waiting for us to all enjoy, and our uniqueness is a prerequisite to unity. And so get to know yourself, and that's the best way we can all unify and come together. We got to drop the programmings that will keep us competitive and not able to fully connect. And anyway, brilliant show. Thank you so much for all your great questions.
Oh, you're welcome, Laura. Thank you. I appreciate it. Folks, Laura Eisenhower. You have a good rest of your evening, Laura, and best of luck to you with getting that year and a half under your belt.
Thank you so much. And
okay,
blessings to you and your journey. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Awesome. So that was Laura Eisenhower talking about parenting with us. And the show's not over, folks, because we have another special guest coming up. Just want to remind everybody that our call-in number, I do have a caller on hold, and we will definitely get to your call. I'm sorry Laura had to go. Busy schedule. But the call-in number is area code 646-716-8890. We're going to be taking your call with Greg Prescott coming up here in just a second. I want to remind everybody that if you do need a life coaching session to really, change your career, or if you really need some help with the challenges and struggles that you're having, being an awakened soul, but then, fighting against these, maybe these triggers that are happening with people in your life, or maybe you've got some energy that you just can't release and you just can't figure out what's going on from a past life or whatever. I encourage you to get a reading from Laura Eisenhower, or you can go to michellewalling.com. And I'm not a psychic, but although I do use my intuition, and I always seem to get the answer that is needed, that seems to be the best appropriate thing at the time. It's just amazing. I love doing it. And, every time I have a satisfied customer at the end of the line. And if I don't, then we just keep working until we figure it out. So I am here, dedication to help people, and as well as my partner. And most everybody listening tonight has probably heard of Greg Prescott, and he's going to join us. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Michelle.
Hi. Well, Greg, you were a child and family therapist for many years before you started N5D. And so I wanted to bring you on the show to allow you to share with our listeners a couple of different topics. One of them is going to be addictions and drugs, because you worked with children who that was one of your specialties. But starting out, if there's anything that you wanted to talk about or comment on about the Laura section of our show tonight.
I thought that was amazing. I thought she covered a lot of ground, and as a compliment, to what she had, I'm going to be taking this in a little bit different direction, but still keeping it metaphysical. So it's going to be fun.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any planned questions for you, but why don't we start off by taking this caller that's been holding for a while, if that's okay, because this question might be related to something that Laura was talking about, and I know that you're more than qualified to be my buddy here to fill in, and I really appreciate you being here. So, area code 386, welcome to the Cosmic Awakening Show. Hey, area code 386, are you eating? Welcome to the Cosmic Awakening Show. You're live. Okay, going once, going twice. Area code 386.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like George, the person on Sam Muggsy's next to.
Okay. Well, if you do want to call in now, or if you have any questions in the chat room, go ahead and type them in. Now would be a good time to call. And back to Greg Prescott. Now, Greg, one of the programs that we have to fight as parents is not only addiction for ourselves, because it's deeply embedded within our coding right now to be addicted to anything that, we might want to escape from, because a lot of us are sensitive to what's happening on the planet. And it's really hard once you awaken to, the things that are happening, and that things are going to change, but we're in a transition period. We're kind of like an in-between void space, and then we have these spurts of energy. Things change, and then they kind of slow down, and sometimes it just gets a little rough. And, there's a connection between addictions and drugs and the astral realm, and a lot of times, parents can find themselves in this position with their children. And what would you like to talk about in regards to what you've seen as a child and family therapist in addiction, and how you can best help your children or some child that you might know that may have an apparent drug problem.
Oh, wow. That is one loaded question. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me just go back just a little and explain. I used to work as an opioid counselor at a methadone clinic and saw a lot of things going on there. Became a child and family therapist. And when I became a therapist, I was working, my specialty is at-risk youth, and I love working with kids. And I think that a lot of people out there that are in the same boat, they can relate to that. Certain people are like child magnets. My daughter is another one of them where, she'll be walking on the beach, or I might be walking on the beach, and children will just run up to you. That's a gift. There's a reason why kids are attracted to certain people like that. And if you can find an occupation where you can help kids because you have that connection, all the better. So what I ended up doing was, because of my passion for psychology and my love of children, I got into being an at-risk therapist for at-risk youth. And what I noticed was a number of commonalities with these at-risk youth who all had substance abuse as a main issue. So what I did was I put together a program and got a patent pending on it, designed to help families who are at risk of dissolution, children who are going through the reunification process, and for parents in need of parenting classes. And it covers a wide gamut of areas such as anger management, addiction and substance abuse prevention, conflict resolution, responsibility, communication skills, and house rules. Now, to sum all this up in a quick way, really, you have to put all the other stuff together before you can get to the house rules. But once you have all that stuff together, one of the best things I can suggest to anyone that's going through issues with their children is to come up with house rules for them, but have the children come up with the fair and relevant consequences for them. Now, the only rule I give them, I create the first rule, and that's respect everyone, because all rules are based on respect. And after that, the kids will come up with the fair and relevant consequences. So if I do this, then this is going to happen, and there's no excuses about, whatever they do. They know exactly what the consequence is because they came up with it. So that's a wonderful way for anyone out there that's listening right now. If you want to, just lay down the law, have your kids help you out on that. And that way they're also involved in the decision-making process. And that gives them a little, taste of that. And they feel important because they are involved with that.
Well, yeah. So that's a great idea for when you have unruly children that just don't seem to want to follow any kind of direction. And you know what? Those are the best kinds of kids these days, because those are our rebels. Those are the ones that are saying, I'm tired of this shit and I'm not going to put up with it on this planet. In this lifetime, man, I am going to bust the matrix down. So, but a lot of these children we're finding have, they have a hard time in school, either they exhibit dyslexia and, they haven't really quite figured that out yet, why they can't quite read things, the way that they're supposed to be read. And they also, the school systems that we just have a real problem with how our children are locked up in classrooms all day. And, excitability, fidgeting, high energy, these are the kind of symptoms that are labeled, ADD and ADHD. And so you have some experience with that. Why don't you give our listeners a little background on ADD, ADHD, and why you do not want to treat your child with the medication that they would normally just automatically describe, because the teachers, they're locked in the programming as well, and they have a legal bound, they'll tell you what's wrong with your kids, and they're not allowed to really, help treat that kind of behavior. It's really left up to the parents in the medical field. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about that?
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, especially if they've had ADD in the past. when I was growing up in grade school, on the back of my report
ADD,
card,
I'm sorry, is attention deficit disorder, and ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
On the back of every report card, yes. On the back of every report card in grade school, it said, fails to pay attention. And it's true. I had the hardest time paying attention, mainly because everything that was being taught was incredibly boring. But maybe it was my higher self saying, this is state-sponsored propaganda. Don't pay attention to it. Let it go in one ear and out the other. But I'd be looking out the window. I'd be doing everything except for focusing on what I should be focusing on. Now, the interesting thing is that when I finally woke up spiritually and found myself, beforehand I used to be the self-proclaimed world's biggest sports fanatic, and I have a selective photographic memory where I can look at the sports page once and tell you who's third in the American League in doubles or who's seventh in the NFL in passer rating and exactly what that rating is. Things that interest me, I find fascinating. So I barely squeaked out of high school and got accepted into a college, and I joined a fraternity and flunked out miserably, got reinstated, flunked out miserably. My parents chose my major, which was business administration, which I found incredibly boring. So after working a bunch of mundane jobs, I went back to college. But this time I figured out that, I like learning about the mind. I like figuring out why do we do what we do. And I went back to college for psychology, and because of my passion for children, and at the time my daughter was just born, I knew I had a responsibility to her as well. So went to school for psychology, and it's amazing because when you actually do go to school for something that you enjoy, it's so easy. I ended up graduating with honors and my master's degrees, and from that point forward, education was really easy. Now, getting back to what I was saying about finding yourself spiritually and all, like I said, I used to be one of the world's biggest sports fanatics, and I had all this clutter in my mind, and I just needed a way to get rid of the clutter. And once I found myself and started meditating and learned how to clear my mind, the attention deficit disorder went away completely. Now, I was on several medications. One was, they start you out on this non-narcotic called Strattera, which is horrible. It turns you into a literal zombie. You don't even feel like yourself after you take that, and it was absolutely horrible. And then the next one I had was Adderall, XR, which is the extended release version of Adderall, and that was amazing. That really did clear my mind. And what it is on amphetamine. And I could take that, maybe, an hour before I go to bed and easily fall asleep. And it just goes to show you how we're all wired differently. An amphetamine, for anyone else that has different wiring, normal wiring, that's going to make them hyper and everything. It just relaxed me, and, I could easily fall asleep after taking one. So it just goes to show you how we're all wired differently. One other thing I wanted to talk about, too, is how the school system lumps us into one big category when they don't take into consideration that some children are introverts and some children are extroverts. The introverts, as I am, and I know many of the people listening that are in the spiritual genre, a lot of us are introverts, and we're not going to learn the same way that the extrovert learns. Plus, we're going to be interested in different topics and subjects in school than the extrovert. We're going to be more apt to go into music, art, and that kind of thing, where we're using the creative side of our brain, where the extrovert is predominantly using the opposite side, the hemisphere of the brain, and they're better at maybe public speaking or, doing something in the corporate world or whatever. So right from the start, you have a dichotomy of, personalities that they're not taking into consideration when they lump us all together in grade school.
Yes, and it is interesting as well that, this is a really good example that, your father was actually in the pharmaceutical industry for many years and retired in that industry. And, later on in life, you really realized, how he was contributing to part of the plan here on the planet, but it doesn't matter in a way because, you weren't going to change that in him. But it was interesting how pharmaceuticals actually did work for you when at a time in your life when you did need it, to calm you down and to slow your mind down and allow you to get the rest that you needed, to be able to go to sleep and to not be as hyperactive and really to help your parents deal with you a little bit better too, because anybody who's been around a hyperactive child, it's like they've had a whole sack of sugar, even if they haven't. Of course, that makes it worse. But that is a very interesting thing, and I bring it up because I just want people to realize that you can't completely, right now you can't completely pull yourself away from the world that we live in, right? If it's in the best interest for the child or for yourself at the time, sometimes you just got to do things. It's always best to do your research on holistic and, alternative type medications, which at the time, if you're a child, you can't do anything about it if your parents are going to shove drugs down your throat. And if it makes you feel better, then it worked out at the time. So
there's also something that you want to look into too, Michelle. If you know that your child has ADD or ADHD, there's things that you can do that don't involve any narcotics or prescriptions while they're in school. And one of them is to, first and foremost, have them sit in the front of the class. That way it's easier for them to focus. Number two, talk to the teacher about that. And if the teacher can just walk by, if they notice that your child is drifting off, all they need to do is tap your child on the shoulder, and that will redirect their focus. The third thing you can do, too, is if it's allowed in school, have the child chew gum while they're in class, because the act of chewing gum, for some reason, helps the child focus, even with ADD or ADHD.
No, that is interesting. Yes. So, hopefully you can have a situation where, the teacher would be willing to spend just a little bit of extra time doing these things with your child. And that's why, it's important to, for some people to be involved in the school when you do have a special needs child like that. Of course, you're going to be, having conferences with the teacher, especially if the teacher's going to be calling you and saying, hey, Bobby won't sit down. He's jumping up and down, like a monkey in the classroom. We got to do something about this. It's stressing me out. So yeah, I never really, I've been fortunate enough to, I really never liked to have any kind of parent teacher conferences with Dylan's, teachers at school. I was fortunate, and he did just tell me just recently. He says, "Mom, like 2 days ago, Mom, I think I might have dyslexia." And so, I know that's his body's way of rejecting what he's reading. He knows it's not his truth, and I talked earlier in the show about the awareness that he has about the subjects and the things that he's learning in school. He has completely no interest in it whatsoever, and had a really hard time trying to decide if he wanted to go to college and what kind of subjects that he would take, just like you did. So, I'm not going to, I took your advice from your life story, and, we are talking about older kids here, but, the younger kids as well, hopefully there'll be one day that we can help, change the whole education system. But I took your advice about not trying to force something on him and totally left it up to him to try to figure it out. Even though they give those aptitude tests and everything, and even though he was almost a prodigy in trumpet playing, the whole school system in itself turned him off as to how they pretty much run your life and basically buy you off and tell you that you have to perform. Pretty much every weekend you're doing performances and stuff in college if you're in the band. And they pretty much own you if they're going to he had a full ride scholarship that he completely turned down. So I was very proud of him for recognizing that he was going to be a slave to the system just based on them giving him the money to go to school, but saying, but we own you. I read the contract. It was pretty obvious that they basically, own you for money, and it just wasn't worth it to get this piece of paper,
In my opinion, I think that's where the educational system fails, because if you have a child that does have ADD or ADHD, and they have an interest like, playing the trumpet or anything in music or art or whatever. In an ideal situation, when they have that ADD, they can just get up and walk over and start doing art, start doing trumpet in a different room or something like that. They need to, what they can do is channel their ADD into something positive and make that work for them. There's ways around this that would make school enjoyable for the child. They'd want to go to do some, to learn stuff that they're interested in. Just like what I was saying about when I went back to college as an adult learner, it was so easy because I was interested in psychology.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know that there are some really excellent teachers out there that have somehow opened up their mind to know that there's really something majorly wrong with our education system right now. And, unfortunately, the schools will label the children who stand out above the others as gifted and talented, which makes all the other ones think that they're dumb. But it is the children that shine that get in the gifted and talented classroom. And my aunt is actually a gifted and talented teacher. And she teaches kindergarten through 12th grade because these are children that, score high on the aptitude tests, which we know that those aptitude tests are now really, there's also a hidden meaning for those to see, who is best programmable for certain particular jobs in, higher level positions on this planet. I mean, that's how they find, candidates for certain jobs. But there are really good teachers out there is my point. And they do try to work more with special needs of a child who has, nowadays it's not uncommon at all. Like I said before about children who are coming out with abilities that we just don't have. And most teachers don't really know what to do about these children. But I have a question in the chat room that maybe you can help me answer. And it says, it's from Jackie Williams. I was wondering if anything is in the works to train teachers to take a new approach in educating this new generation. So, I mean, in your studies, on N5D, what have you found? Have you heard of any new approaches that would that be found? I guess in a Montessori school would be, I guess, the best thing I could come up with.
Yeah, your best bet would be to look into a Montessori type setting. Definitely. One of the areas that the educational system seriously fails on is the administration of IQ tests. Because what I can tell you is that when I was first in school and I was failing to pay attention, I was getting horrible grades, but that didn't mean that I wasn't comprehending anything else. I ended up getting an IQ test, and my IQ was like 135 or something like that, just short of qualifying for Mensa. But my grades weren't reflecting that. And what they need to do, in my opinion, is these kids that are getting bad grades and that are exhibiting ADD or ADHD, give them an IQ test. And I think they'll find out the majority of the time that you have very intelligent kids here that have the capacity and capability to learn a lot, but they're just not tuning in to what the school is teaching them.
I agree, and I think a private school setting is going to be more conducive to being more malleable. I think we're just really restricted in the public school system because there's an agenda across the board about what they're going to teach, and they give teachers these days very little leeway in that. And it really just takes the fire right out of the teachers. And the really good teachers are the ones that don't let that happen. They follow the protocol, but they're very smart, and they sneak in a lot of creativity. And right now, one of the biggest complaints Dylan has as a senior is that he's got some of his classes, 3 of his classes are taught by coaches. And the coaches are so they really wanted to be a coach. They didn't want to have to teach history or whatever it is that he's taking. But, that's what they're doing is they're multitasking their employees to suck every, slavery part out that they can of them. And in order to save money because their budgets are getting cut and they're, it's just the whole system is screwed up and we all know that. But I do want to encourage people listening. If you're listening to this show, we are going to be the ones, and our children are going to be the ones that end up making these changes, because once the system starts falling down, whether it be through the government, the banking, finance, extraterrestrials, people waking up, and we get to take over the media, and we get the word out as to what's really happening on this planet. This is where we're going to have to start building things from ground zero again, and we are the ones that are going to decide, and our children are the ones that are going to decide what they want to learn about, and we can be as creative as we want, and really discuss the things that basic needs of children growing up in a new type of environment. And that's very exciting to think about. Greg, do you remember the name of the article that we wrote together?
No, I don't. I think it's something about the future of education.
Have you reposted that yet?
I'm not sure, honestly.
We'll check it out, and if we haven't reposted it yet, we'll get it right out for you. Yes, it was the future of education. Yeah. I also wrote one called The Future of Healthcare that we probably need to get out there too. Changing, education, healthcare, our politics, our banking system, pretty much everything in our environment needs to change. And so, that's what we're working on as, activists, and bringing this to people's attention. So I wanted to talk, we've got about maybe 10, 15 minutes left in the show. Let me see if we have any callers. Not at this time. If you want to call in, we've got just a few more minutes. We can fit you in. Area code 646-716-8890. Did you want to talk a little bit about, is there anything you really feel that you need to tell people about this addiction problem, and how serious it is to go ahead and get professional counseling? Because, as a metaphysical and spiritual leader, you do realize that, drugs open up a crack in our aura, and it does allow negative thought beings to attach themselves to us. And when that happens, there's two different, the best way of approach, obviously, is to get your child to a metaphysical healer that could help with grounding and clearing, and using the natural energy of the planet to heal that aura and get that, energy out, but as well as, maybe a psychic healer that can actually see the energy or whatever that causes the addiction to keep coming back, But for people who aren't that open to, or don't have those kind of resources, how important is it for, to get professional help, even if it does involve medicine, pharmaceuticals? And tell us a little bit about that methadone treatment that you were talking, that you're an expert in.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I firmly believe that there shouldn't be any laws, period, except, don't hurt yourself or others. That's it. But once it gets to the point, once addiction gets to the point of where you're hurting yourself, then there's a problem. And I've seen this a lot, especially as an opiate counselor at a methadone clinic. There was a woman there, and I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to violate HIPAA policy, but she was a nurse, and she was stealing Vicodin from her.
Oh, honey, you're cutting out. Are you still with me? Your phone, did you hit mute accidentally, honey?
No, not that I know of. Maybe
okay.
I did.
You're there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, I had this client that was heavily addicted to Vicodin. She was a nurse and was taking her patients' Vicodin. She took so much of it that she ended up going blind, and irreversibly. Wow. Yeah, so it can lead to some serious health issues. Not only that, but once you if you're addicted to any kind of opiate, whether it be Vicodin, heroin, oxycodone, whatever, you initially get this amazing high, and then that goes away, and what ends up happening is you're just taking the drug to sustain from not getting sick, having that morning kind of sickness thing that happens when you don't have that in your system. And that's where the overdose ends up happening, because you end up needing more and more and more to avoid the sickness that you end up overdosing. So what I would recommend, and I've seen this time and time again where it has been successful, I would definitely check out a methadone clinic. And what they can do is wean you off of the methadone. Now, methadone is even more addictive than heroin, but it allows you to lead a normal life. Once you have the methadone, you can't tell if a person's on methadone or not. But like I said, it is highly addictive, and they can wean you off of it in a gradual process. And I've seen a lot of clients get weaned off of it and lead successful lives from that point forward. So there are options, and unfortunately, that is one area where Big Pharma does come in handy. I'm very anti-Big Pharma, but I would definitely support that if it helps people from, to help them completely get off of their addictions.
Yeah, the reason I brought drugs up, is for the middle school and high school, age children, because they're, as part of this attacking of our children to make sure that they're programmable and that they don't wake up to who they are as, spirits having this experience in a human body, and that they are basically, more powerful than anything that is messing with them at this moment. Is the drugs. I mean, there's an inside underground whole system across the planet to push drugs on our children. And, even the marijuana these days is usually laced with something, some kind of opiate or some kind of there's no telling, acid, I don't know what. There's no telling what's in the pot. Especially the medical stuff that they push off as medical can also be laced as well. And one hit of this stuff and you're basically gone. You almost leave your body. So, I'm not gonna say marijuana is a bad thing, but what I am gonna say is marijuana laced with things is a bad thing, and our children don't know. They don't know what they're taking. They don't know what they're doing, and a lot of it's peer pressure. So, if there's any signs about drugs, I just do encourage you to actually, this is one thing I would not completely stand for, and that's get involved. Definitely get involved, and without, being forceful, basically sit down and explain the problems that about drugs and how it does work with your energy system. And, if you receive resistance, then, you just got to keep trying, because you don't want to push them away, but you do want them to know that you're here for them for anything. And eventually the higher self is going to yell out for help. And that's when you can step in and offer, be there for your child. And, we just got to be really careful with drugs, because that's the one thing that does open the aura for, energy vampires to come in. And then they start working directly against you, because, they see you've found your power and your sovereignty, and you begin to see the triggers. You see the triggers in your children, the anger, or they've studied these thought forms or energy beings that have stepped into your child's aura on drugs or alcohol. They've watched you. They know your triggers, and they know what to say to get you angry, and that's pushing your buttons. And they do that without alcohol or drugs, but mostly it gets exacerbated where you're going to have to step in and do something. So, on a lighter note, I mean,
hang on. Let me jump in here real quick. What a lot of people don't realize too is that if you go to a bar, you go there, you get hammered, and you're leaving. There's a shitload of negative entities that are hanging out right above that doorway that are just waiting to psychically attack you, because you are so vulnerable at that point in time. So just be cognizant of what's happening when you do go into a bar, and if you decide to have a few extra cocktails or whatever, even if you have a designated driver, just be aware that, there are these negative entities that know exactly where to go and where to hang out and where to find you. That can attach themselves to you in a blink of an eye.
And that's a really good point, because you're bringing that home, and they really love the kids. I mean, they'll do everything they can to get the pure child, the bright soul energy that just came in and hasn't been as tainted as you. So yeah, responsibility for yourself when you have children, is very important. And it's not just about, worrying about getting a DWI or, being put in jail or whatever, and then your kids being taken away from you, by the way, and horrible things happening at that point. But you have to be conscientious of energy-wise what you're bringing home to your kids as well. It's like a disease. What kind of disease am I going to be bringing home to my kids today? I mean, it's time to be responsible for ourselves and to really, we're just trying to do the best we can and trying not to we're trying to stop all the opportunities there are for being, I guess messed with is a really good way to put it, to be able to stay connected, because they're going to do everything that they can do to disconnect us. We're always going to be connected, but that we can be even more connected when we have a clear mind and when we are able to, to stay away from people who want to trigger us all the time. I mean, right now is the time that we need to be working on ourselves and really staying in a loving, grounded place and not letting people trigger us. We can't help it sometimes, but the more it happens, the more opportunity you get, the more blessing it is, because the more opportunity you get to work on it. Now let's talk about your princess, Greg.
Wait, time out real quick. In the chat room, Paint Free was asking, what is described as negative entities? Demons, astral spirits, ghosts, negative ETs. Yeah, it could be any of those. It could be archons. So yeah, just be cognizant. It doesn't matter what negative entity could psychically or physically, emotionally attach to you. Just be aware that they are there. And, my suggestion would be, before you leave a bar room, just to protect yourself psychically, if you can remember to do so. Enclose yourself into that, your white light, which is basically your higher self. And ask your higher self for protection, and you should be okay.
Yeah, and Jackie Williams has a point in the chat room. It's all energy, just like us. Everything is energy. Light and dark are just polarities, and groupings of spirits will cling together for more power. And that back to, hold on just a second, I have to cough. Okay, back to this, what is described as a negative entity. Well, we are little miniature creator beings walking around in these bodies, and we have a mind that is part of our mind body, our mental body, which is in our energy field. But in our physical body, we have a brain, and this brain is capable of working with our mental body and creating thought forms. And every thought that we have is actually a possibility and an entity. It's a living. It's energy. So every thought that we have is created, and it has to go somewhere. It has to attach to something or do something. So, being responsible for your own thoughts, I've always written a lot of things about that, because if you're creating negative thought forms, then, you are, and we're talking nastiness. We're not talking, just talking about negative things. We're talking about nastiness, and those things can jump around on different people, so that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about negative entities, but also in the astral realms, exist what I guess you would term demons, or are beings that are of a negative polarity energy, and they are thought forms that have grown into an entity. So that's how I can describe it. I've never been to the astral realm. I might go at night, to either do some clearing, or maybe I accidentally knock on the wrong door or something, and I'm running back into my body real quick. But no, I don't really have that kind of experience with it. The experience I do have with it, I've written about, and that is I've studied it and ran it through what sounds and feels right to me. We're definitely not experts in that, but I really do feel like I have a little bit of a grasp on what we're working on at this time in this lifetime, and that's clearing energy from your body. A lot of this energy can be stuck from past lives, and we do have a lot of information about that on N5D. So, Mr. Greg, let's talk about your princess and how the birth of your daughter actually, made a huge impact on your life and opened up your heart, which changed your programming in your life and made it possible for you to move forward in life. Tell us a little bit about your daughter.
Yeah,
and
if it wasn't for Brittany, N5D wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have this radio show right now. When my daughter was born, that's when I decided to finally get my shit together and go back to school and so on. And I already talked about that. But it's interesting. One day I went to pick her up. Her mother and I divorced shortly after her birth, and I had joint custody. And I went to pick her up one weekend, and she wasn't ready at the time. So her mom asked me, have you ever seen the trailer to The Secret? I'm like, no. And so I went in and checked it out, and I was so blown away by it that by the time my daughter and I got home, I went online and I ordered it, and everything since then has changed incredibly. And a lot of people will say, oh, it's just a bunch of metaphysical mumbo-jumbo. One of the things in The Secret, and you can attest to this, is that they say you envision a parking spot opening, and there it is. How many times do I have the best parking spot ever?
Oh, almost all the time, except for just today. But almost all the time, it's like, it's amazing. We pull up, and there's always a parking. You're one of 3 spots at the beach, almost always. Yeah. Or anytime we're going to the grocery store, I mean, you just drive right up to the front, and somebody's always walking out or pulling out right there.
And it's not just any parking spot. It's the best one available.
It's true.
So that is the power of The Secret. And, I will segue into what you were talking about, but I wanted to get that out there because it really is everything. It's the law of attraction. What you put out to the universe comes back to you. And as a matter of fact, that will come back to you as well through illicit substances or alcoholism or whatever. When you're, being attacked by these negative entities, you're going to get a magnification of that returned back to you. But getting back to what Michelle was asking, when Britt was little, she was. This is how I learned about manipulation and children. And I'm a huge football fan. I admit that, and not as big as I used to be, but I still love watching football. When she was little, she would curl up in a little ball, and she'd look at me with her little puppy dog eyes and talk in her little angel voice, and she'd say, "Daddy, can watch a little football with you?" I'd be like, "Sure, pumpkin." And then 5 minutes later, she's running around doing everything else other than watching football. And I didn't see how she was manipulating me for a couple of years, because you just fall in love with that little angel voice and, the innocence of the child. And then I'm like, Britt, no, you have to go to bed. You're not watching football at all. Get to bed. And she realized that I was finally caught on to her little acts there. But the thing is, when she did that, one thing that happened was, let me just backtrack just a little. Before she was born, people would ask me, are you hoping for a son or a daughter? And like most men, you kind of want that son to carry on the lineage and all this crap. And crap it is. But as it turned out, I wouldn't trade Brittany for all the sons in the world because she taught me something that was completely invaluable. And what she did was she took down that macho barrier that I probably would have passed on to a son. Oh, you take it like a man, that kind of BS. But she broke down that macho barrier in me and showed me a side that I haven't seen within myself since I was a kid. And that right there, because what we do as men is, we put up this macho facade, which is utter bullshit because you're buying into the society. And what it's really doing is taking away from the divine feminine that everyone has, as well as the, bolstering the divine masculine. It's putting you out of balance with who you are. And to accept the divine feminine doesn't make you any less of a man. Doesn't mean you're all of a sudden going to be going to ballets and, singing show tunes. You know, not that I'm stereotyping, and not that there's anything wrong with that. But, you know, that's just not my cup of tea myself. But, you know, what it did do was it showed me a side of myself that I haven't seen. And I think that's really important for people to pay attention to. You know, if there's a side of yourself that, you know, the inner child, if you haven't brought that inner child back out, find ways to do it. You know, if you live near a beach, go out and build something in the sand. You know, if you don't live near a beach, the next time it rains, jump in mud puddles just for the hell of it. You know, do stuff that brings out that inner child within you, and it's gonna change you completely in so many ways.
Yes, I agree. You know, one thing that I've worked on is to heal my inner child, and you can really, that's what the children right now can teach us, is how to be more childlike and how to let this illusion of this reality that we live in kind of go as much as possible without losing your responsibility for yourself and, you know, for the pacts that we made to raise these kids that we have. And, you know, your kids, your child just, she just grew up, you know, really quickly, and she's already out the door. So, you know, the time goes really fast. Yeah, the time. Oh, that makes you like what, 38? 35?
Yeah, I had it when I was 18, so it took me at 39.
You know, it's just amazing how fast it goes, and we're just doing the best that we can as awakened parents, knowing what's happening. We can't let these things, you know, bring us down. We've got to try to stay positive and be, especially if you're a parent, you know, your main goal right now should just try to bring unconditional love, positivity to the home, and to remove some of the fear that the children carry from other lifetimes, because there's so much fear that we had of speaking out and being who we were, because we've been suppressed over and over again. And now we need to encourage the children to blossom and grow and shine and be who they are, and know that they're loved and know who they are. And that's the most important thing that we can do for our children, over money, over, you know, what kind of school you're putting them in, over anything else. If you do that for your child, that child's going to grow up in having exactly what they need to, just at the right time, being awakened to what they can do for their children and the children beyond that. So with that, if there's anything else...
Yeah, definitely. I want to bring up one thing. If you're about to have a child, or if you have a young baby or a toddler, always encourage them to use their imagination. You know, ask them. You know, if they look like they're playing with an imaginary friend, ask them their friend's name. You know, don't ridicule them. If I have a friend, this is a great story. She's a nurse, and when she was young, she had a natural ability to go out of body. And what she would do is she'd go out of her body and visit neighbors or whatever. And one day she went and visited her neighbors, and she was just standing there watching them watch TV. And the following day, she was asking them about the program they were watching. They're like, "How did you know that we were watching this program?" She said, "I was right there. Didn't you see me?" They're like, "No." And, eventually she would talk to her friends about it at school. And you know how kids at school can be. They can be really, really rude and cruel. And they ridiculed her because they didn't have that ability. So what she ended up doing was suppressing that ability. And it wasn't until recently that she just started getting that back, because she realized that that's a gift. And that's what you want to do as a parent, is to encourage these kind of gifts and to tell them, and you know, encourage the child that it's okay that you have this gift, but also to be to let them know that, you know, you may get ridiculed about this, and you may want to be more, you know, selective on who you talk to about that, and you may even offer different ways to find out, you know, if, you know, this child that they're talking to is going to be acceptable of these kind of conversations. But, you know, when you're only 6 or 7 years old, that's a little bit more difficult. You know, you can't just come out and start talking about something lightly metaphysical and jump into something else. But they're going to know. Another thing, too, is, and this is just real simple, one of the best pieces of advice I got before Brittany was born was to not to look forward to all the milestones, like the first time they stood up, the first time they walked, talk, and all this stuff, because you're going to miss everything in between. Just love them for every day, every second that you can, because, like I said, my daughter's 21, and she just came down and visited, and it went by way too quickly. And I love her more than anything on this planet. Creator couldn't love her more than me. And I seriously, and it'll go by so quickly on you. So just love them every second that you can.
Absolutely. The milestones and everything, that's just that was a program set up to, set the milestones up in the 50s. And then, in the 60s and 70s, the women's liberation took the mothers out of the home, and, the women started getting jobs. And so you had two parents working sometimes, unless you were lucky enough to have, the mom be able to stay at home or the dad for that matter, but that was just a lot more uncommon at the time for the dad to stay home and the mom to go to work. But, it's all programmed to make you, I feel like to make you feel guilty for not being there for those milestones, because the majority of the people that I know were really more worried about putting food on the table and going to work than the milestones. And all of a sudden they look back and their kids are grown and they're going, oh my gosh, I wasn't there enough for my kids. And then that guilt trip, sets in. So, people really, the main thing I want to get across right now is you gotta forgive yourself and let this kind of stuff go, because, we couldn't help it at this point. And that's what we're here to acknowledge and to be aware of, so that we can change. And if you're a young parent right now, and, you can hopefully take the advice from the veterans, that have been on the show today, that say, only if I had not fallen for the programming to go, be successful in my career above unconditionally being there and loving my child and nurturing these wonderful new, indigo children that we have that are being born, or the crystal children, or, if you really love kids, highly suggest, maybe going into a metaphysical practice where you can nurture the children with the special needs. And you'll want to listen to that show that I had with Fernando Vasa on BMSS Radio. You can just get on Facebook and type in B as in boy, MSS, and that's Body, Mind, Soul, Spirit Radio. I've only had a couple of shows, but that was an important show, and I did have that show with him, and he explains on how you can nurture those special needs children. And I mean, gosh, I can just imagine you making a living from it, opening up a clinic or whatever, and having the kids come have playtime. Especially the homeschool children is basically what they've geared their studies towards. A creativity for the children to be able to go interact with other children. And that's the thing with homeschooling, is that you're segregating your children from the social skills that they really do get in school. And that's one of the things that we would keep in the education system, would be the social skills and interaction. And so, take them to the park, play with other kids, and, you just have to get over that phobia of other uneducated parents have against, a child that hadn't been vaccinated, if that's the path that you go down. So I hope that we've filled your plate full of things to think about today. What we like to do is not tell people what to do or how to think, but to give them enough information to spark thoughts of their own and to try to figure out what's best for their path. And Greg, I want to thank you for joining me on the second half of the show. It's what a great surprise. And I just always love to interact with you and hear your voice, of course. And I'm in Texas right now, and you're in Florida, and I can't wait to see you again. And I want to thank you for the Cosmic Awakening Show and, being our sponsor on N5D Radio. And also want to give you an opportunity to tell folks about your websites.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, as well as Laura, and thank you to everyone listening now, whether live or in the archives. It goes by so quickly all the time, and me, I'm an introvert, and I don't get on the radio much anymore, but once you get me on, it's easy to talk to you. So we can do this again some other time. You can find me. Well, my websites, I think everyone knows them, in5d.com. We get like 3 to 4 million visitors every month now, and a big shout out to Larry for sharing our articles with his groups. Thank you, brother. And my other website is bodymindsoulspirit.com. We call it BMSS for short. It's a lot easier to say, but man, there's an article that I posted last night about Himalayan rock salt that went viral, and it's on it already. And so it's definitely check that out. I also have another website called holisticcancerresearch.com, where Dr. Leonard Caldwell talks about there's over 300 cures for cancer, and ideally I want to have information on all 300 of these cures. So that's another project I'm working on. As if I don't have enough on my plate, but it's funny. I was thinking too when you were closing things up. The question I ask a lot of people is, what would you do if there was no such thing as money? And number one, I would have an orchard where I would have just grow fruit there, and I'd put a sign out front: help yourself, and if you know someone that's hungry, grab some for them too. The second thing I would do is, obviously, I'd continue doing my websites because I love doing this. I love helping people. And the third thing I would do would be something along the lines of maybe some kind of daycare where I could help children find their true divine purpose for being here. And, it would look like an ordinary daycare, but what I would be doing would be really helping to guide them, or to guide themselves, as a better way of saying that, to find out what their interests are and to help spark that curiosity in whatever direction they decide. So, yeah, that's what I would do if there was no such thing as money.
Well, that's promising because, maybe one day we'll have some support in opening up something like that. And I would be just thrilled to work with the parents while, the kids are doing their little classroom. I would love to talk with parents and do the coaching as well, and understanding how to work at home with their children and how to get past everything that we've talked about today. So, yeah, it's just, the only thing that I can really be certain about is my own life experience and the observation. It's almost like I feel like sometimes I'm the witness here watching things, as you awaken, you become the observer. So, but, Greg, I have that, I've gotten really serious about a subject lately, and that is How to Exit the Matrix is my new website that I built all by myself from scratch. And I'm building a database of Matrix articles, basically that describes the Matrix, what it is energetically, who's imprisoning us on this planet, and are we imprisoned? And it's really eye-opening, a lot of the things that have come out in the open lately. And I appreciate your support on allowing me to share, exitthematrix.com with a lot of our readers. And just want to let you know that next week's guest, moving right along on the Matrix topics, is Paul Massey from Escaping the Prison Matrix. And he and Alan Stockdale have a radio show. I've had Alan on my show, and Paul is his sidekick that couldn't make it at the show that we had scheduled before. And so Paul, and I've also been on their show. So Paul and I will pick up where we left off on his show regarding the Matrix. And Paul's a really laid back, very cool guy. He's very centered and grounded, and we're going to talk about healing and the energetics. How healing yourself is going to really does make a difference in shattering this illusionary, this thing that's surrounding the planet, that's keeping us from being who we are and knowing who we are and taking our memory away. So I'm really looking forward to that show, and hope all the rest of you can join me on that show next week. Same time, same place. Greg, love you, and I will chat with you probably later on. And thanks so much for joining us tonight. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michelle, and just sending out love to everybody that's listening in the chat room and on the archives. And it's been a pleasure. Namaste to all.
Good night.